Classical Music Mysteries. Did you know that a certain name was intentionally erased from a musical dedication right before publication? Ludwig van Beethoven's Violin Sonata No. 9 in A major. It is one of the most famous violin sonatas in music history. Today, we call this piece the Kreutzer Sonata, but the original manuscript tells a different story. It contains an inscription completely different from the one we know today. Look at the dedication written at the very beginning. The name there isn't Kreutzer. It belongs to someone else entirely. If not for a single incident, this masterpiece might have been known by a completely different name. Behind the name Kreutzer Sonata lies a hidden story. It is the story of a master musician who premiered the piece only to be pushed into the shadows of history. This is the strange record of a violinist whose dedication was revoked in the shadow of a masterpiece. Chapter 1: The Black Pearl of Vienna. The year was 1803. In Vienna, the Grand Master Joseph Haydn was still alive. Meanwhile, an energetic Beethoven was steadily establishing his fame. A violin virtuoso arrived in this city. His name was George Augustus Polgreen Bridgetower. He was 24 years old at the time. His father was a black man of African descent from Barbados in the West Indies. His mother was reportedly Polish-German. He had been active in Paris and London as a child prodigy. He was such a remarkable virtuoso that he even received the patronage of the Prince of Wales, the future King George IV. In early 19th century Europe, it was incredibly rare for a person of color to achieve high status, but Bridgetower was different. His outstanding talent and refined manners captivated even royalty and the aristocracy. He may have been viewed by some as an exotic novelty, yet he ultimately commanded deep respect as a true artist. Why did he visit Vienna? He wanted to test his skills before the city's sophisticated audience. He also had another goal. He wanted to meet the most talked-about man in the musical world at the time. Spring 1803. Bridgetower finally met Beethoven through the introduction of Prince Lichnowsky. The two men clicked instantly. Beethoven was 32, Bridgetower was 24. Beethoven was blown away by the young violinist's powerful playing. He loved his unconventional interpretations. Beethoven realized he had found the perfect partner. This was someone he could trust with his groundbreaking new music. In a surviving letter, Beethoven wrote high praise recommending Bridgetower. He called him a very capable virtuoso and absolute master of his instrument. They hit it off immediately. They shared meals together and spent hours playing music. Soon, Beethoven began writing a new sonata just for him, or rather, he decided to finish a sonata he was already sketching out, dedicating it to Bridgetower. At the top of the original manuscript, Beethoven jokingly wrote, "Mulatto Sonata, composed for the mulatto, Bridgetower, great lunatic and mulatto composer." This was a deeply affectionate inside joke. It was a testament to their tight bond at the time. At this point, their collaboration was going perfectly. Chapter 2: The Resonance of Madness and Friendship. The piece Beethoven prepared for Bridgetower shattered all the rules of the traditional violin sonata. Back then, violin sonatas usually featured the piano as the star. The violin was often just a supporting instrument, but Sonata No. 9 was entirely different. At the very beginning, the violin plays chords entirely on its own, with no piano accompaniment. It is a bold start. It is as if the violin is fiercely asserting its presence to the audience. The piano then responds. Soon, the two instruments are clashing violently. Beethoven himself said he wrote this piece almost like a concerto. He wanted to capture the massive scale and tension of a solo instrument facing off against a full orchestra, but he was doing it with just two instruments. However, the composition of the new sections wasn't finished until the very last minute. The premiere was set for May 24, 1803. The venue was the Augarten Hall. The time was 8 a.m. Beethoven's pupil, Ferdinand Ries, later recalled the chaos of that morning. He wrote, "I was called at 4:30 a.m. Beethoven ordered me to copy out the violin part for the first movement. There wasn't even time to call a professional copyist. The piano part wasn't even written out properly. Most of it remained in the form of shorthand sketches. If this were a modern concert, it would probably be canceled, or at least the program would be changed. But the two men pushed forward anyway. Finally, the morning of May 24th arrived." Chapter 3, May 24th, 1803. It is 8 a.m. at the Augarten Hall. Nobles and music lovers are gathered. Beethoven and Bridgetower step onto the stage. The sheet music in front of them was dangerously incomplete. The third movement had been repurposed from an earlier sonata in A major, so a clean score existed for that. But the crucial first and second movements simply weren't ready. They hadn't even had time to copy the second movement. Bridgetower had to play directly from Beethoven's messy original manuscript. It had been written just hours before. It was nearly impossible to read. Since Beethoven was playing the piano, his part was mostly just sketched out notes and reminders. The performance begins. Tension fills the room. Then, during the first movement, a legendary moment occurs. Bridgetower does something entirely improvised. Reacting to Beethoven's playing, he mimics a piano phrase and plays it back on the violin. It was an on-the-spot ad-lib. It wasn't written in the score at all. Hearing this, Beethoven instantly stopped playing. He looked at Bridgetower and shouted, "Noch einmal, mein lieber Busch." The two men enthusiastically repeated the phrase together, then smoothly continued the performance. Bridgetower himself shared this story in his later years. It is possible he embellished it a bit. However, eyewitnesses like Ferdinand Ries highly praised the performance. They were amazed at how masterfully the duo handled such an impossibly difficult piece. Ries noted, "Mr. Bridgetower played this exceptionally original work with such precision and passion. It was as if he had been practicing it for a long time." Despite essentially sight-reading the music, the concert was a massive success. It is no exaggeration to say Beethoven and Bridgetower completely mesmerized the Viennese audience that day. Their friendship, forged through this powerful musical bond, should have been unshakable. That is, until a certain incident at a tavern changed everything. Chapter 4, A Rift in the Night. The two were incredibly close. They often dined and drank together before and after their performances. These must have been joyful times, celebrating each other's immense talent. But then an incident occurred that would alter the fate of the sonata forever. There are very few official records of what actually happened. However, decades later, Bridgetower claimed the argument started over a stupid joke about a girl. Perhaps caught up in the excitement, Bridgetower made a thoughtless remark about a woman Beethoven knew. It is also important to remember Beethoven's state of mind at the time. He was suffering from the terrible stress of his advancing deafness. He was highly emotionally unstable. Whatever the exact reason, Beethoven exploded in a blind rage. His anger was so fierce that it instantly shattered the deep friendship they had just shared on stage. Beethoven immediately broke all ties with Bridgetower. He ruthlessly revoked the dedication of the sonata. Originally, the manuscript proudly bore the humorous insider dedication to the mulatto Bridgetower, but those words would never see the light of day. To Beethoven, dedicating a piece was not just a friendly gift. It was a crucial diplomatic tool. It was a way to maintain relationships with wealthy patrons or show respect to highly influential musicians. Now that Bridgetower was out of the picture, Beethoven decided to play this diplomatic card elsewhere. For the publication, Beethoven selected Rodolphe Kreutzer, a highly famous violinist from Paris. Kreutzer was a heavyweight in the French music scene. He was such a revered authority that his violin exercise books are still widely used by students today. Beethoven had met Kreutzer previously in Vienna. He respected his solid, reliable playing style. Furthermore, Beethoven was eyeing a career move to Paris. Doing a favor for a man like Kreutzer made perfect strategic sense. And just like that, between the frantic premiere and the final publication, the piece changed its identity. The Bridgetower Sonata became the Kreutzer Sonata. The newly printed score was shipped off to Kreutzer in Paris. Beethoven had lost a dear friend, but he thought he had secured a stepping stone for his future success. However, this choice would result in one of the greatest ironies in music history. Epilogue: The letter that never arrived. Over in Paris, Rodolphe Kreutzer finally received the sheet music. His reaction was completely ice cold. He reportedly declared the piece unintelligible and simply incomprehensible. A sonata where the violin and piano battled each other as equals? To Kreutzer, it likely sounded like barbaric noise that went against refined French tastes. In the end, Rodolphe Kreutzer never once played the sonata that bore his name in public. Meanwhile, what happened to George Bridgetower, the man stripped of his dedication? He eventually left Vienna and returned to England. He continued working as a musician, but he never again reached the dazzling heights of that 1803 Vienna premiere on the main stage of history. Over time, his name faded from public memory. In 1860, he passed away quietly in a forgotten corner of London. For a very long time, history buried the fact that he was the first man to stand shoulder to shoulder with Beethoven and conquer that impossibly difficult sonata. Today, when we go to a concert hall, we hear this piece announced as the Kreutzer Sonata. The name of the man who refused to play it became synonymous with the music itself. And the name of the man who led its premiere to a roaring success was forever erased from its cover. But if you ever have the chance to listen to this piece, please remember the truth. Listen closely to the passionate, battling sounds of the violin and the piano. Within those notes lives the spirit of a brilliant mixed-race virtuoso who once drove the audiences of Vienna absolutely wild. Thank you for watching. If you have your own thoughts, theories, or interpretations, feel free to share them in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing for more content like this. See you in the next video.